Hi, I'm a classical archaeologist and a classicist. I've been living in developing Eastern and Mediterranean cultures and other traditional cultures. A Levite man in the story, an elite, had a concubine, that means not a wife, who was unfaithful to him and left him for her father's home in the north of Israel. He followed her to her father's home, taking an extended period to reach her father's house to get her back. Rather than return her, the father delayed for several days, entertaining the Levite. The father was probably lower class, since after all the Levite hadn't wished to marry his daughter. She was only his concubine, meaning that she was only his property. I've seen similar situations in Eastern and Mediterranean cultures, although not as extreme, of course. The father could doubtless not directly refuse the Levite. Remember, the father was probably from one of the lower classes. The Levite was from the elite class. Entertaining dinners in Eastern and Mediterranean cultures precedes negotiation. So this is a reciprocal way in which it's expected that the guest would repay the host following the entertainment. The original giving the daughter over to the Levite in the first place may have involved a type of monetary exchange, but the Levite soon became tired of the father's attempts to negotiate and delay and took the girl with him anyway. He was, after all, the elite party and she was still his property. But how had the girl been unfaithful? This is not specified. Perhaps she merely liked another man, or perhaps simply running away to her father was deemed unfaithful. Whatever it was, this does not justify violence. So the Levite took the girl with him back to his hometown, and on the way, they passed through a village and decided to stay the night. They became the guests of an older man, and in the night, villagers mobbed the house, demanding that the guest come out so they could abuse him. But the host refused. "Take my virgin daughter, or the concubine instead," he said. So the Levite sent the concubine out to them, and they gang raped her and abused her the entire night, so violently that she became unconscious and apparently seriously injured. In the morning, the Levite left the house and found the girl unconscious at the doorstep. Rather than making sure she was okay, he simply ordered her to get up and follow him. She didn't answer. She may still have been alive. It's not specified. He didn't try to get her a healer or doctor. He simply took her to his home, cut her into pieces, and sent each of the pieces to each of the 12 tribes of Israel. Meaning she was either dead and he contributed towards her murder, or he directly murdered her afterwards. He used her as an excuse to declare war on the tribe of Benjamin. So, war was declared on the tribe of Benjamin. While many might disagree with me, I don't see this passage as having a spiritual message. It's a historical record, written, it is believed, not long after the actual event. If anything, it's written to exemplify the extreme lawlessness of the Israelite social group before the advent of the first kings. Since these accounts were either written or modified during the reigns of the kings, it is plausible that this narrative, even if true, and there is no reason to believe that it isn't, served as propaganda to justify the reign of the kings being more organized and law-enforcing. The behavior outlined in this account is not a biblical example for how to behave. The account does not sympathize with the woman. She is seen as the Levite's property and his damaged goods. The Levite didn't love her. She was a possession, which he used since he was afraid of being assaulted himself. The woman's feelings and suffering are not discussed. There might be an attempt to justify it by having her seem unfaithful, since she left an abusive man for her father's home. Thus, this account shows us the extreme attitudes men had in the late Bronze Age to early Iron Age Israel toward women, at least during the 12th to 11th centuries BC, late Bronze Age, when the book of Judges takes place. This book is believed to have been written soon afterwards. These events took place, as we've said, in the late Bronze to early Iron Ages in Canaan, a part of the Egyptian Empire. This was during the overall reigns of Ramses II, Merneptah, and Ramses III. During the Egyptian Empire, women had high status, in many ways equal with men. They could own property, have professions, including be doctors, and many had legal rights. The assault and rape of women were illegal. Women also had higher status, legal protection, and rights, and many careers in the neighbouring Hittite, Canaanite, and Philistine societies. In Babylon, they also had much higher status and some legal protection. Egypt patrolled its empire and governed its provinces. It had military bases and roads throughout Canaan, throughout the empire, including Canaan. But this event took place probably in a remote village, and such are more difficult to patrol continuously also today. However, the subsequent skirmish and tribal uprising against the tribe of Benjamin would have come to the notice of the Egyptian authorities and been suppressed. At that time, the authorities might also have inquired into the cause, learned about the story, and if so, they would have punished the Levite and others involved. However, Book of Judges only mentions the Levite's innocence and the aftermath, since how the Egyptian authorities dealt with it if they discovered the incident was not essential to the narrative. Remember that to Egypt, a developed superpower, and the other superpowers, this area was a backwater with very primitive thinking. It was an undeveloped region. The Israelites criticized Egypt and other neighboring superpowers' immorality, but this often happens when there is a huge disparity in development, education, and understanding. I've lived in a few underdeveloped and traditional societies, and although I generally like living in them, I've seen the same stereotypes of developed societies and their people myself. However, while some might attempt to claim that this story aligns with modern Western immorality problems, there is no comparison. These days, such behavior, including objectifying women and putting a woman out to be assaulted, is illegal worldwide in all countries and punished accordingly when discovered. But it's difficult to keep track of everything when there are remote villages and a disparity in social levels and education levels and so on. And this was the same in the Egyptian Empire. During the Herodian era, much later, this is late 1st century BC to early 1st century AD in the Roman Empire, in Roman-Judaean, Agrippa I, the grandson of Herod the Great and last king of Judea, returned to Judea from Rome on one occasion to find that a high priest had illegally burnt a young girl, the daughter of a rabbi, alive for fornication. This was illegal, since the high priest could not enact the death penalty. Only the Roman Agrippa I could, as the designated leader of the area. He was the last king at the time. The high priest was thus trying to take power into his own hands. Moreover, Agrippa I identified as Roman and had grown up in Rome, even though he was born originally in Judea. In Rome, a young girl would not be put to death for fornication. She'd have been reprimanded and she'd have been then married to someone, perhaps even to the man she'd been fornicating with if her parents approved of him, or to someone else. Putting her to death for fornication was considered barbaric and shocking. It was even extreme for Jewish law. And therefore, Agrippa I immediately removed the high priest and replaced him.